There is a silence that precedes mastery, a pause before the soul learns to speak its own name. In that pause, everything you thought you knew about control dissolves into something far more ancient. Most people mistake discipline for violence against the self. But what if it were actually a form of prayer? What if the chaos you feel isn't a sign of failure, but a soul that hasn't yet learned to dance with its own shadow? You know this feeling, don't you? The way your voice betrays you in moments that matter most, either too loud, desperate for validation, or so quiet it disappears entirely. The way your moods crash through your life like uninvited storms, leaving debris in relationships you tried to protect. The way money slips through your fingers like water, no matter how tightly you grasp, because somewhere deep inside you don't believe you deserve to hold it. This is the exile of the unintegrated soul, the one who speaks but isn't heard, who feels but cannot contain, who earns but cannot receive. Sacred discipline is not about controlling your life. It's about learning to host it, like a temple keeper who tends the altar not with force, but with reverence. The voice, the mood, the relationship with abundance, the inner multiplicity, these are not enemies to be conquered. They are aspects of your soul asking to be witnessed, integrated, ritualized. This isn't about abandoning the world of feeling and expression. It's about finding the sacred rhythm beneath the chaos, the pulse that exists before the noise. In Jungian psychology, the voice carries what he called the transcendent function, the bridge between conscious intention and unconscious truth. There was once a woman who spoke in meetings with such urgent precision that colleagues would lean back in their chairs. Her words were sharp, cutting through air like desperate arrows. She believed she was being powerful, but at night, alone in her apartment, she would whisper apologies to the walls, practicing softer ways to say the same truths. What she didn't know was that her voice was carrying the unspoken grief of a childhood where silence equaled invisibility. Every loud word was a small girl screaming, I'm here, please don't forget me." The voice, you see, is an archaeologist. It unearths what the conscious mind has buried. When we speak faster than our soul can feel, our words become vessels for our wounds rather than expressions of our wisdom. The neuroscience of speech shows us that vocal patterns are regulated by the vagus nerve, the same pathway that governs our sense of safety and social connection. Consider your own voice for a moment. Does it carry the rhythm of your truth or the urgency of your fear? Does it speak from integration or leak emotional residue like a cracked vessel? There's an old Sufi saying, "You are not the storm, you are the sky through which it passes." Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's research on emotional granularity reveals that our ability to distinguish between subtle emotional states directly impacts our psychological well-being. But we've been taught to fear our emotional weather, to medicate mood swings, to stabilize what the soul is trying to express. What if your mood fluctuations aren't pathology but poetry? What if they're the language of archetypal forces trying to move through your psyche? She would wake some mornings with a heaviness that felt ancient, older than her own life. The therapist called it depression, the psychiatrist suggested medication, but in her dreams that night she was standing in a vast desert holding the bones of women she'd never met. When she woke, she understood. She was grieving not just her own losses, but the unexpressed sorrows of her lineage. Cortisol, our primary stress hormone, doesn't just respond to immediate threats. It carries cellular memories, activation patterns inherited from generations who survived what they couldn't process. Your moods are not random weather systems. They are invitations to integration. The sadness that arrives without explanation might be your soul creating space for something new. The anger that feels disproportionate might be your authentic power finally refusing to stay hidden. Sacred discipline with mood doesn't mean controlling your feelings. It means learning to ritual them, to create space for them to be felt, witnessed, and then released with ceremony. In archetypal psychology, money represents the circulation of life force, our capacity to receive and transform energy in the material realm. There was a man who could generate income like magic, but every dollar would slip away before he could truly claim it. Emergency after emergency, investment after investment gone wrong. He would joke that money was allergic to him, but at night he would dream of his father, a good man who worked 3 jobs and died tired, whispering with his last breath, "I never had enough." The trauma of scarcity isn't just about not having money. It's about the soul learning that receiving abundance equals betraying those who had less. It's about carrying the cellular memory of ancestors who equated survival with struggle. Research in behavioral economics shows that our financial decisions are 95% unconscious, driven by neural patterns established in our first 7 years of life. Sacred earning becomes a soul contract when we understand that our relationship with money reflects our relationship with our own life force. Do you allow energy to circulate through your identity, or do you create dams of unworthiness that block the flow? Wealth, in its deepest sense, isn't accumulation. It's circulation. It's the soul's capacity to receive what it has called forth and to transform it into something that serves not just the self, but the larger web of existence. James Hillman spoke of the soul's need for multiplicity, the recognition that we contain not one unified self, but many archetypal sub-personalities seeking expression. The chaos you feel isn't disorder. It's a council of inner voices that have never been formally introduced to each other. The perfectionist who demands flawless execution, the rebel who wants to burn it all down, the child who just wants to be held, the wise elder who sees the futility of the struggle. In ancient cultures, this multiplicity was honored through ritual, ceremony, seasonal celebrations, where different aspects of the community and the individual were given their time and space. But we've been taught to present one consistent face to the world, to suppress the parts that don't fit our personal brand. The result? Inner civil war. She would set morning routines with military precision, then find herself 3 days later staying up until dawn, painting abstract shapes that seemed to emerge from some primordial place within her. The disciplined self would shame the creative self. The creative self would rebel against the disciplined self. Neither was wrong. Both were seeking integration. The neuroscience of parts work, developed by Richard Schwartz, shows that internal conflicts literally create competing neural networks that can hijack our conscious intentions. Sacred discipline isn't about choosing one aspect and silencing the others. It's about becoming the compassionate witness who can hold space for all parts, creating internal democracy rather than internal dictatorship. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when the very structures that once liberated begin to suffocate. The morning meditation becomes mechanical, the clean eating becomes orthorexic, the boundaries become walls. The spiritual practice becomes a performance for a God who was never keeping score. Marion Woodman wrote about the tyranny of perfectionism as a form of spiritual anorexia, starving the soul in pursuit of an impossible ideal. She had crafted the perfect life. Morning pages at 5 a.m., green smoothie, workout, work, evening gratitude practice, lights out by 10. Her friends admired her discipline. Her social media gleamed with inspiring quotes and sunrise photos. But somewhere between the perfect routine and the perfect presentation, she had lost the ability to laugh spontaneously, to cry without shame, to feel joy that wasn't scheduled. One Tuesday evening, she found herself standing in her kitchen holding a pint of ice cream, sobbing not from sadness but from the relief of imperfection. The part of her that had been starving wasn't her body, it was her humanity. This is the shadow of spiritual discipline, the way it can become another form of self-abandonment, dressed in the language of growth. The soul doesn't want to be optimized, it wants to be witnessed. It doesn't want to be fixed. It wants to be loved as it is, in all its messy magnificence. Research by Dr. Kristin Neff on self-compassion shows that self-critical perfectionists actually achieve less than those who treat themselves with kindness during setbacks. Sacred discipline must include the discipline of allowing imperfection, of creating structure that breathes, of building altars that can hold both the light and the shadow, the success and the failure, the transcendence and the very human stumbling. Carl Jung emphasized that transformation happens not in dramatic moments, but in the small repeated acts that align us with our deeper nature. True dominion isn't domination. It's the capacity to respond rather than react, to choose rather than be chosen by unconscious patterns. It's sovereignty over your own psychic kingdom, not as a tyrant, but as a benevolent ruler who understands that real power serves life, not ego. The ritual isn't what you do, it's how you do it. The consciousness you bring to the ordinary acts that comprise a life. In the tradition of embodied spirituality, daily practices become what Thomas Keating called active prayers, physical actions that align the nervous system with spiritual intention. She began each morning not with affirmations, but with a single question whispered to the silence, "What wants to be born through me today?" Then she would light a candle, not for any deity, but for the unnamed part of herself that had been waiting all night to be remembered. The flame became her witness, her anchor, her reminder that she was both human and holy. Sacred discipline transforms routine into ceremony. Boundaries become not walls, but sacred containers. The morning pages become correspondence with the soul. The evening reflection becomes a gentle accounting, not of productivity, but of presence. Neuroscientist Dr. Rick Hanson's research on taking in the good shows that deliberately savoring positive experiences for 10-20 seconds literally rewires the brain for greater well-being. These aren't productivity hacks. They are love letters to your own existence, daily vows to treat your life as sacred space. The shadow, in Jungian terms, isn't evil. It's simply the aspects of ourselves we've been conditioned to exile. And everything exiled seeks return. Why do you sabotage the very things your soul desires? Why does the part of you that craves order also rebel against structure? Why does the desire for discipline activate the impulse toward chaos? Because somewhere in your psyche lives the memory of discipline as punishment, structure as control, order as the death of spontaneity. The shadow fears that to become disciplined means to become rigid, lifeless, inauthentic. Dr. Gabor Mate's research on addiction and self-sabotage reveals that destructive patterns often originate as adaptive responses to early trauma or emotional neglect. He would start every new routine with genuine enthusiasm: morning runs, evening journaling, weekly meal prep. But within 3 weeks, he would find himself staying up too late, skipping workouts, ordering takeout. The part of him that wanted structure would be overruled by the part that equated structure with his father's rigid demands, his mother's perfectionist expectations. The ego sabotages what the soul desires because it cannot distinguish between life-giving structure and life-denying control. Both feel like constraint to the part of the psyche that learned survival meant avoiding any form of external regulation. Sacred structure honors fluidity. It creates form that serves life rather than controlling it. It builds containers strong enough to hold transformation, flexible enough to allow growth. Research in attachment theory shows that secure attachment develops not from perfect consistency, but from good enough responsiveness that repairs ruptures with attunement. The discipline that liberates includes space for rebellion. The structure that serves includes room for spontaneity. The sacred container is strong enough to hold both the yes and the no, the commitment and the resistance. In quantum physics, everything exists as vibrational frequency. Our thoughts, emotions, words, and actions all carry distinct energetic signatures that attract resonant experiences. There is a frequency that is uniquely yours, not the voice you use to fit in, not the mood you perform to please others, not the energy you project to get what you think you want. Your authentic frequency is the resonance of your soul speaking through matter. Most of us are broadcasting static, emotional noise mixed with mental chatter, mixed with unprocessed trauma, mixed with inherited patterns. We wonder why our relationships feel chaotic, why our creative projects stagnate, why abundance feels elusive. But energy leaks through misalignment. Power dissipates through incongruence. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research on heart coherence shows that when our thoughts and emotions align, we generate measurable electromagnetic fields that influence both our biology and our external environment. She noticed it first in meetings. When she spoke from anxiety, rushing to fill silence, proving her worth through words, the room would grow restless, distracted. But when she waited for the deeper knowing to emerge, when she spoke from the place beneath the need to impress, people leaned in. The quality of her presence changed the quality of attention she received. This is the difference between sounding powerful and being grounded, between making noise and creating resonance, between broadcasting desperation and emanating authentic authority. The polyvagal theory developed by Dr. Stephen Porges reveals that our nervous system constantly broadcasts our internal state to others through micro-expressions, vocal tone, and energetic presence. Tuning your frequency isn't about perfecting your performance. It's about aligning your expression with your essence, speaking from integration rather than fragmentation, moving from coherence rather than compulsion. Integration in depth psychology isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's the ongoing practice of welcoming all aspects of the self into conscious relationship. To become sovereign is to become the guardian of your own psychic kingdom, not as a dominator, but as a wise ruler who understands that real power serves life, not ego, who knows that authority comes not from control, but from presence, who creates internal democracy rather than internal dictatorship. The integrated person doesn't eliminate their shadow, they dialogue with it, doesn't suppress their emotions, they ritual them, doesn't control their thoughts, they witness them with compassion. Dr. Daniel Siegel's research on mindsight shows that the capacity to observe our own mental states with curiosity rather than judgment literally changes our brain structure, increasing neural integration and emotional regulation. There was a man who spent years trying to eliminate his anger. Meditation, therapy, spiritual bypassing, anything to avoid the rage that felt too dangerous, too destructive. But the anger didn't disappear. It went underground, emerging as passive aggression, chronic fatigue, and a depression that felt like a gray blanket over his life. The transformation came not when he eliminated the anger, but when he learned to honor it, to recognize it as the guardian of his boundaries, the protector of his authentic power. He created ritual space for the anger to speak its truth, to be witnessed without being acted out unconsciously. Rumi wrote, "Don't try to get rid of the pain. Use it as a bridge to connect with what is sacred within you." Emotional sovereignty isn't about emotional control. It's about emotional integration, creating conscious relationship with all the forces moving through your psyche, becoming spacious enough to hold contradiction, complex enough to embrace paradox. You recognize this, don't you? The way your voice sometimes carries truth and sometimes betrays desperation. The way your moods flow like ocean tides, beyond your control but not beyond your understanding. The way abundance feels simultaneously possible and forbidden, as if receiving too much would violate some ancient contract with struggle. Dr. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But the reverse is also true. Everything we recognize in others reflects something within us seeking integration." Maybe you've tried discipline before. Maybe it felt like violence against your spontaneity, punishment for your humanity. Maybe you've swung between rigid control and complete chaos, never finding the middle path that honors both structure and flow. This isn't about getting it right. It's about getting it conscious, about moving from unconscious patterns to conscious choice, about transforming discipline from external imposition to internal rhythm. The Sanskrit word dharma doesn't translate to duty or obligation. It means that which upholds. Your dharma is the unique way your soul chooses to serve life. Your voice, your mood, your relationship with abundance, your inner multiplicity. These aren't problems to be solved. They are instruments to be tuned, aspects of your soul seeking conscious expression, invitations to integration. Before you sleep tonight, before the dreams carry you into the timeless realm where souls negotiate with the unconscious, try this. Place your hand on your heart and ask not, "What do I need to control tomorrow?" but, "What wants to be honored tomorrow?" Listen, not with your mind, but with the deeper intelligence that exists beneath your thinking. The same intelligence that grows your hair, beats your heart, and dreams your dreams without your conscious effort. In the tradition of Hildegard of Bingen, the 12th century mystic, every aspect of creation carries viriditas, the green life force that seeks expression through matter. Write 3 words on a piece of paper, not goals or affirmations, but qualities you want to embody. Not what you want to achieve, but who you want to become in the process of living. Let these words be your altar, your reminder, your gentle return to center when chaos arises. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's about treating your life as sacred space and your daily choices as acts of devotion. Sacred discipline is not what you do to yourself, it is what you do for your soul. Joseph Campbell spoke of the hero's journey as the archetypal pattern of leaving the familiar, encountering the unknown, and returning transformed. But the most profound journey happens not in mythical realms, but in the ordinary moments where we choose consciousness over unconsciousness. When you tame your voice, you don't silence it. You attune it to its deeper wisdom. When you work with your moods, you don't suppress them, you transform them into poetry. When you create sacred relationship with abundance, you don't grasp it, you become a conduit for its circulation. When you integrate your inner chaos, you don't eliminate it, you orchestrate it into symphony. The word discipline comes from the Latin disciplina, which means instruction or knowledge. It shares the same root as disciple, one who follows not from obedience but from love. This is the vow, not to perfect yourself, but to consecrate yourself, not to eliminate your humanity, but to honor it as the vessel through which your divinity expresses, not to control your experience, but to meet it with such presence that every moment becomes a choice point, every breath becomes a prayer, every day becomes an opportunity to return, not to some imagined ideal, but to the truth of who you have always been beneath the noise. You don't shrink when you embrace sacred discipline. You remember, you don't become smaller, you become more yourself. The soul that learns to host its own complexity, to ritual its own rhythms, to honor its own multiplicity, that soul doesn't need to seek power. It becomes power. Not power over others, but power with life itself. Final oracle. Discipline is not the cage that imprisons your wild nature. It is the sacred container that allows your wild nature to dance. If this resonated with something deep within you, if these words touched the part of your soul that has been seeking permission to integrate rather than perfect, share this video with someone who is also on the path of sacred becoming. Sometimes the medicine we need most is the reminder that we are not alone in our complexity. And in the comments below, share one word, just one, that represents the quality you want to embody as you walk this path of sacred discipline. Not what you want to achieve, but who you want to become. Let this space become a temple of mutual recognition, where souls who understand the difference between control and consciousness can witness each other's journey. Remember, you are not broken, you are not behind. You are exactly where your soul needs to be to remember what it came here to express. Subscribe for more transmissions from the intersection of psychology and soul. Each video is a portal, each word a seed, each moment an invitation to remember who you really are beneath the noise.